In today's podcast, I speak to Robert Laidlaw, a man who has lived nearly 9 decades. Now, if you want a blueprint on how to approach life, here it is. There's a time to learn. There's a time to reflect on things. There's a time to seek and accept challenges. And there's a time, as the Irish would say, to get on with it. I'm going to actually start with just a basic question, which is, how old are you and what year were you born?
Yeah, 89 years old, of uncertain health, born 1936. Raised in Bedford, New York, about 50 miles north of the city. And at the age of 3, 1939, my father, who had come over from England and who had attended the Dartmouth Naval Academy, I called London and said, "Can you use me for the war?" And they said, "No, but get in touch with Canada." So he called Ottawa. They said, "Yes, come right up." So my mother and father left me at the age of 3 with my 2 older brothers, and they went up to Halifax. And so for 6 years, I would see my father intermittently when he would come back down on leave or whatnot. But essentially, my grandparents raised us, my brothers and me, for that period of time. So Dad started off the war as captain of a corvette, looking after convoys, cargo ships going to Europe, and did that for a number of years. And then the Home Office grabbed him and put him in Ottawa, which is the head of naval operations, and he ran things out of there. So anyway, my grandparents, my mother's side,
Well, let me
wonderful.
ask you. Let me jump in there just for a second. So,
Yeah,
your dad was from England. I mean,
Scotland. Yeah,
Scotland. Sorry,
yeah,
Scotland. Actually, I knew that because
yeah,
David had mentioned. So
yeah.
so I should say the UK.
My grandparents, were well off, but with the being in that state, there was a chauffeur, a gardener, a laundress, a cook, several maids, and whatnot. And the end of this aspect is when my grandfather died at the age of 79, and I was, 16 years old. He didn't have a penny. It had all the property, all the wealth had disappeared. And so later on, an uncle of mine said, "Well, we had the Depression, we had the war. My grandfather or my grandparents could not bring themselves to say, 'Oh, I don't need you anymore. You're fired.'" And so, anyway, it all dribbled away. And
Oh,
so I was young enough and resilient enough so that it didn't impact my life at all. But to have, when you see the pictures of the property and all this, and you say, how could that happen? Well, stuff
right.
does happen. Stuff happens. And so maybe
Well,
that was a good learning experience that I wasn't aware of what was happening, while it took place.
well, yeah. As you get at different stages in life, you realize that nothing is permanent, and
Yeah.
there's nothing that you can 100% count on. From 3 to 9, do you have any memories of the time? I say that because now at that time in my life, that would be Watergate. And so
Sure.
I
Sure.
actually, you're 6 or 7 and these things are coming across, you don't know,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of protests and I can remember things of that nature.
Yeah.
Are there any impressions that you had as a boy back then?
Well, definitely when the war came. So 41 for us. So I would have been 5. I
Right.
remember when Pearl Harbor happened, I was told, go out and play outside. My grandparents had other things to listen to on the radio.
Right.
And we had our victory gardens, and there was gas rationing and other forms of rationing and whatnot. We had a small farm, so we were able to sustain ourselves a little bit just on that basis. But definitely, as opposed to your story, the country was cohesive. We were fighting the bad guys, and so
Right.
we all collectively knuckled down, did our little share, and all that kind of thing. And but yet it was real war, no doubt about it. And my cousins in Scotland or whatnot, I had actually cousins in London getting bombed and the whole
Right.
thing. So the war was a major element in my formative years. Yeah.
Well, on that note, when you're talking about the cohesiveness of it, was so as a child, so it starts when you're 5. Now,
Yeah.
when you I'm sorry, I'm let me
Yeah.
quickly do the
Yeah.
math. Starts as far as the U.S. or I'm trying to
I don't
quickly.
know. Yeah,
Okay,
I don't know.
so,
So 3 to 5, it's Canada, but
okay,
no.
yeah. I mean,
I
but
guess the
you're
storm clouds were amassing, and we knew it was
right,
going to happen, and whatever.
right.
Yeah.
Well, but when you're growing up at that age, that you're saying, whereas I was aware, due to an uncle who was protesting and things of that nature
Yeah.
about Watergate. I'm 7
Yeah.
years old at that time.
Yeah.
But when you're living there in Bedford and
Hmm.
are you aware as you're getting older, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, that there's something going on, that we're all coming together and that there's sacrifices being made? Is
Oh,
that what you
sure.
mean?
Oh, sure. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You hit the nail on the head. With the absence of my parents, my brothers and I were sort of free in the sense of not being totally supervised. So we did a lot of dumb things. I mean, rock fights, BB gun fights. Actually, at one point, one of my brothers said, "Let's play bows and arrows." We had bows with steel tipped arrows, and we'd sneak around upstairs in this large house. And so I'm going into her bedroom. Zing! He shoots me, and I didn't know it. But then I came back later. I had blood down my face. He said, "Uh oh." So we did a lot of dumbass, crazy stuff that you shouldn't do, and survived and whatever. So in that sense, I don't know, just sort of wild, a little wild. Uh, no, my grandparents were good churchgoers. My father, being a good Scot, yeah, you walk the line. We expect you to make an effort and do things, be a nice person. So subliminal kinds of pressures, nothing really overt.
You went to boarding school in Boston, is that correct?
30 miles outside of Boston,
Okay, so
South
30.
Borough, Mass. Yeah.
Okay. And you went and you were there during the year. You went, say, September to June, and then did you go back for?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you returned for holidays. Would that be correct? Just to get a feel for what you were
What,
experiencing?
returned home for the holidays? I mean,
Yeah.
Christmas, Easter kind of thing. Sure. Yes.
Christmas,
Yeah.
Easter, and then the summer. Did you stay at home during the summer?
As a youngster, I mentioned the Cape Cod place, and later on, when that was sold, the family would essentially my grandmother, because my grandfather died, a little time up in Maine where we had relatives, and I forget. Martha's Vineyard for a couple of years, Nantucket for a while. So it would depend. Some summers I'd stay around and cut lawns or work locally or whatnot. One summer I worked on a farm up in Maine. The local harvesting of blueberries was big business then. And
Right.
that was a wonderful experience. You get out with these guys, you call them maniacs. They're from Maine. And it's doing back-breaking, stooping over, raking blueberries all day and whatnot. So I did that for 3 summers and whatever. So parenthetically, I think the work ethic is a good thing. I think all people should be exposed to that. Just do it. Just do it. And later on, when my father said work for Shell, I had some wonderful summers. I was out in Wyoming one summers on what they call a seismograph crew, where you set off a charge, record the shock waves, and see what the geology is. But our work was just laying these electronic devices around, picking them up, and doing a lot of grunt work and whatnot, working 12-hour days because it took 2 or 3 hours to get out to the work sites,
Right.
and whatever. So again, I think in this case it was manual labor or whatnot, but I think that's a very worthwhile experience just to get out and see, different parts of the country. Well, I wrestled, I guess, senior year at St. Mark's. I was 137, and then I went to Yale. I wrestled there as well.
Oh, you
I
did.
was never a champ, and my let's say my real weight at the time was low 140s, 143 or something like that or whatnot. And so for me to pull weight and get down to 137 was nothing. Now my arch rival that I occasionally beat out, and then most times he'd beat me out in the tryouts. Who's going to represent the college on Saturday. Honest to goodness, in the summer months he would get up to 170, and
Wow.
then come down, come down, come down, and we'd have tryouts midweek, and I'd be 140 and he'd be 148 or something. Well, let's say 145. Okay, and he beat me. Oh, most of the time he'd beat me. Okay, too bad.
Right.
He'd get out there on Saturday having lost the last 7 or 8 or 9 pounds, and he'd be no good at all. The trouble with the sport is, and maybe what have they done to clean it up? Because too many guys are making too big a sacrifice in losing weight. No doubt
Oh
about
yeah.
it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So,
The fu-
so yeah, you go
oh,
ahead.
I was just gonna say the funny thing was you that gets instilled when you're in third or fourth grade because you start. I mean, you have maybe just districts and you're doing local stuff, and then you start going to state,
Yeah,
and
now you
it
froze
get.
up there. I guess it came through all right. You were saying it gets instilled at
Oh,
an
sorry.
earlier
It
age. Is
just
that what
that
you're
the
saying?
idea of
Yeah,
losing weight and what you have to
yeah,
do to cut it out.
yeah, yeah,
That idea that this is so important, this has so much value that
yeah.
you'll ignore health. Tell me about your when you went off to Yale.
Yeah,
Were you nervous about it, or was this something that no problem? This is the track that I'm on.
yeah,
And I ask that because when
yeah,
you're 18 or 19, I don't can't imagine this changes for anyone.
yeah. Well,
Whatever author I'm
in
reading,
my case, and I guess in a lot of cases of those that went to boarding school, I love the freedom of college. You
right.
get up, you sort of get up when you want or when your classes are. If you want to drink, you can drink. If you want to do this, you do that, kind of thing. So I really appreciated that. The confinement had left. Now, some people couldn't handle that,
Oh yeah.
i.e.,
I,
therefore, the drinking or whatever. But with me, it was a joy to be in a larger universe as opposed to the boarding school.
oh, okay. So yeah, although I was saying to a friend the other day because his both of his kids are in college and one of them's about to finish this year, and I was saying the funny thing about college is it's basically it's the opposite of the work world. It's the biggest transition, and I would submit that it's
Yeah.
in a way, I mean, not educationally, but in a
Yeah,
way, it's the worst preparation for life because for 4 years you have this really flexible schedule. You're
yeah,
really healthy. Generally, you're with a bunch
yeah,
of people who are your age, and everybody's having fun. And yeah, you got to
yeah,
go to class and all that kind of stuff. Because I just
yeah.
remember when I graduated and then had to get my first job post school, and I was
Yes.
going, "Oh, I have to work the rest of my life," and it's a bit of a shock.
And I can come at this from different angles,
Yeah.
but liberal arts, a little sociology, which I really liked, I should have taken more of it. Uh, the philosophy thing was, here we are in this life. What the hell do you do with it? What's it all about anyway?
Right.
And so maybe it's the worst. The philosophy majors I've learned at one point since then get less, make less money than any other. I don't know how to phrase it. Any other
Then any other major
major, yeah. Well, certainly
or
in the
field of
science,
study?
and
Right.
yeah, and even less than English majors or French majors or history majors or whatnot. So whatnot. So I feel, and you read these tomes, Scott, and other than Plato, who knew how to write, Nietzsche knew how to write, whatnot, a lot of them don't know how to write worth a damn. It's terrible stuff, terrible stuff. And how many angels who dance on head of a pin? Well, that's not quite your discussion, but you really can get sidetracked.
My just as a side
Yeah,
note, my
yeah,
my my son is majoring doing in Ireland economics and philosophy,
good
and
for him. Yeah,
well, in Ireland they have these programs, and depending how
yeah,
you do on the leaving cert you get in,
yeah,
and he took the economics and philosophy, and I had said to him, I said, yeah, I think that'll be good training for you, but after a year decide,
yeah,
do you have an option? But in Ireland, you don't have too much. So
yeah.
he has sent me some stuff over the last couple of years, going, can you make any? This makes no sense. And
Yeah,
and I just say that these are some of the
yeah,
poorest writers if you obfuscate, apparently
yeah,
that came off as good philosophy, but I have
yeah,
no idea what they're talking about.
yeah.
So so he has
But
experience. It's funny that you say that because he really ended when
sure,
he read Plato, he was so happy that he could
yeah,
understand it.
yeah. But I'll come back and be supportive a little bit because again, when you're in the work world or just the living experience or whatnot, let's say it's the smaller business world, and there are issues and problems and whatnot, and how do you solve them? Solve them. Well, the thing about philosophy is you never learn the answers, right?
Right.
You
Right.
learn, as they say, the joke is you learn how to ask the right questions. But
Right.
maybe you come up against things that say, there is no answer, or the answer works for this, but not for this, or whatnot. And you feel your way and whatever. In that sense, philosophy is not all bad. I was going to say what I didn't mention is that my junior year, I went to the Sorbonne and studied there for a year, actually with one of my college roommates from Yale. And together we lived in this little houseboat, maybe 15, 18 feet long. No heat,
How did you
no
end up with the
electricity,
houseboat?
no heat, no light, no running water. We
Right.
were hippies. We were hippies before the word hippie
Right.
existed or whatnot.
Right.
It was a terrible life, but it was a wonderful experience being there, for 12 months in my case. Uh, it was the age of the ugly American. There's a book
Right.
I think called The Ugly American,
Right. Yeah,
and
I'm aware of it.
I can remember GIs, service guys, and they're sitting having wine or coffee in the Champs Elysees, and they reach in their pocket. In those days, most of the French coinage was made out of zinc, big pieces, whatnot. You could
Right.
probably bend them and whatnot. And they'd reach in their pockets, come out with some change, and throw it in the gutter. Now, when the average Frenchman saw that, it didn't endear them to U.S. servicemen. So the ugly American, you could feel that a little bit. But again,
Right.
living abroad, wonderful, wonderful experience. And in the summer months, a friend of mine from Yale came over. His father had bought him a car, and we traveled around Europe together. And the beautiful thing about Europe that is you can go here, and you learn and whatnot. So we get in the car, well, where are we going today? And you ended up at a pension and, some town you never heard of. And just anyway, that's a good experience. But what I wanted to do when I was there was climb the Matterhorn, right?
Right.
So I'm not a mountaineer. I'm not a real hiker or nothing. But I went to Zermatt and got off the cog railway there. And there the guides, the mountain guides, solicit people almost like prostitutes. They come up and say, "Psst, you want to climb a mountain?" at, at the time, I had a beard, a nice beard, sort of
Right.
reddish in color, and I
Right.
looked fit, and they thought I knew what I was doing, which I didn't know at all. So we climbed up the
Presentation is everything.
yeah. So this guy dragged me up the mountain. I'll never
Right.
forget it. It's a wonderful experience, kind of thing. So again, my 12 months in Europe, wonderful time. I mean, educational, developmental, just good in so many ways. So anyway, then when I came back to Yale, I essentially never had the full credits that I should have had to take my what do you call the final test in your major, whatever.
Okay.
And so I scraped by. I got by, and I said, fine. I'm out of college. I'm happy or whatnot.
Is there anybody that you were reading that you said, hey, maybe I need to shift how I'm thinking about things? Or was it just, these are just things I'm learning and I'm
Oh,
moving on to the next track?
you get your mind bent a little bit. You read a little bit of Kierkegaard or whatever. I said Nietzsche before, whatnot. And
Right.
sure, that they can open up vistas. So who was it that said? One of the pragmatists said, his pondering of all over decades, what's life all about? He said it's a matter of becoming. Well, does that answer anything? No, but it gives you a little orientation kind of thing. So
Right.
let's say philosophy expanded certain areas of awareness in me or whatnot, but in terms of getting out and functioning in the real world, I was totally not realistic at all. I thought when I graduated, I want to go to Africa. I want to travel. I want to do things. Yeah, people have to hire me because I was Yale. Yeah, I want to work for National Geographic. I want to go around the world. I want to take pictures and write articles. So, and if my parents or somebody had a friend that worked for National Geographic. So at an interview, they said, "Oh, well, okay, we'll go back and work for your local newspaper for 2 or 3 years, and
Right.
then come back and show us." I had no interest in working for my local newspaper. I wanted the exotic life and whatnot. So Scott, that
Go
didn't
pay
work.
your dues. Go
Yeah,
pay your dues, and you have to with everything.
so that didn't work out. So I spent the better part of a year talking to various corporations. Yeah, send me out to Malaysia. Yeah. I'll work for you. Whatever the companies were doing. No one wanted me. So that was a real dose of reality. So finally, my uncle, my
Can I
mother's
can I
brother,
interject something there?
sure,
But one of the things that's admirable about that
yeah,
is that okay, it wasn't realistic that they were going to give you the job, but
yeah.
what was realistic was that you were willing to take the job and embrace the adventure of traveling and going to different places.
I guess, but wouldn't anybody or wouldn't lots of people do that kind of thing? So,
I'm
you know,
actually rereading a book right now, and it's about I had read it a few years ago when it had come out, but I'm rereading a book. It's about the idea how people don't challenge themselves in these
Okay.
days of comfort.
Yeah.
And so I would say no, I don't, well, in my opinion, people are choosing comfort, and I'm talking like on a very small level, such as
Yeah.
I know a number of people don't go to movie theaters anymore. And that's not
Yeah.
talking about
Yeah. Yeah.
going off to Africa to take pictures or things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that I think a lot of people would consider going, no, these are all the things that can happen to me that could go wrong.
Oh,
So
okay.
I
Okay.
think there has been a shift in that. And one of the things with the Stoics is that you need challenges to develop yourself, just as if you're going into a weight room. You're never going to get stronger if you don't lift the
Yeah.
weights.
Okay.
And that these challenges are instructive, and these challenges are what we need. Now, it's not at the time that you get rejected, and I can think of when I'm cold calling people and I go, that's a
Yeah.
wonderful experience. However, I go, all right, next step, next step, next step. And so at that point, where did you have to dig down, find the gear of resilience, and go, all right, this is not going to work out like this. I need to do something. Where were you with your mental fortitude?
Well, I was challenged, but no, I think deep down I said I'm still a rough diamond. There still is a diamond, and so I didn't question the ultimate long-term future. I just thought I got to do something now and do it. So what did I do? I went down to was it Whitehall Street, where if you want to sign up for the army. Okay, I'd
Okay.
been at Yale. They came and looked at us, and I was 1A, right? And I'd been digging ditches that summer. I was in good shape and whatnot. I went down to Whitehall Street, and they rejected me because of my heart murmur. I was born with a heart murmur.
Oh,
They had
okay.
me jump up and down one leg, and they said, "No, we can't use you." So maybe that was the nadir saying, "Oh my God, even the army doesn't want me. What am I going to do?" I can't remember the chronology, but yeah, you know,
Right. No, because there's a number of things go, wait a second. Now, if the
yeah,
army's not taking me.
yeah.
Now
It's pretty bad.
I have to sort of rethink that.
So I was hired in '58 at a princely wage of $60 a week.
Hmm.
Now, is that what a philosophy major is worth? I guess so. Yeah, I guess so. So,
Until then, you couldn't put a number on it, but you could now.
yeah. Okay. So then 5 years go by, and I think I'm getting a shot at the firm needed another broker, and they would have financed a seat for me. And they got involved, which you can look it up, the salad oil scandal, where the
What?
firm had
Say that again. What is it?
salad oil scandal.
Salad
And
oil scandal. Okay.
yeah, salad oil is a commodity.
Right.
And one of the firm's clients had bet heavily on salad oil and was fraudulent. He never had the salad oil. The tanks were empty or whatnot. So the firm went belly up because they were on the hook for the declining price of salad oil. So
Right.
you're out of a job. Boom. So no benefits, 5 years, out of a job. All right. So I
Oh, I'm
work.
gonna let me. I want to go back just to
Yeah.
before you get to that. So you get
Yeah.
done, but did you did graduate
Oh,
from
sure.
Yale? Okay,
Oh,
I
yeah.
just want to make. But you had just mentioned that about the final exams and credits and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I would have gotten a more elevated grade had I done
okay,
all the courses in
okay.
logic and
Yeah,
whatever.
but you wouldn't have
Yeah,
been in Europe for a year experiencing
yeah,
all that you
yeah,
can experience, which I
yeah,
think on somebody who I had on my podcast, we were talking about how being an expat really is great for development and a bunch of
yeah.
skills and
Well, you've been there,
independence.
done that, whatever.
Yeah,
Sure,
yeah.
sure.
So, but when you get done with before you're done with college, before you're done with college, do you know that you're going to get this job, or are you up in the air going, don't know what I'm doing. I have this philosophy major. What gets a philosophy degree? Or did you already know, well, I'm getting this and I know I'm on track to Wall Street?
No, no, it was more, no one wants me. Oh, what the hell? I might as well do something, so I'll work down Wall Street. That's what it was.
Talk to me about martial arts. You had said, as I had said, that my son had done Muay Thai. A friend of his does boxing. Actually, a couple of his friends do boxing. Was it Taekwondo? Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. Again, we did the wrestling thing. We talked about that, whatever.
Right. But when
And
did you, how were you introduced to Taekwondo?
it was more just personal interest and hear about the exotic quality of karate and kung fu and whatnot. And I saw a tournament, and one of the referees, the way he moved and whatever, I said, I like this guy. I like this guy,
Right.
whatever. And I looked him up. His name was Henry Cho.
Okay.
And Henry had a business degree in economics or something, came over from Seoul, had been captain of his karate team over there, and was a fourth degree, which means he was a master. And beautiful movements,
Right.
beautiful control, strength, flying sidekick, where he'd miss your nose by less than half an inch.
Right.
How do people do this? I don't know. So I got taken by it, and I was with the school for 5+ years, and it was a good school. It was
And how old were you at this time?
I think 26,
Okay.
26.
So
Yeah,
this is post Yale.
yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah,
Okay.
and our school was a third white, a third black, a third Hispanic. There are no Asians. Why I don't know.
And this
And
was in New
we
York?
in New York City, yeah.
Okay.
And so we get out there and punch and kick and block and the whole darn thing. And you had nothing but respect for your classmates. They were just, it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. So I did that, and then when David was born, decided, to move to the country,
Right.
out of the city, and so said goodbye to Taekwondo. Then Henrik Cho went on to be great grandmaster, 10th degree, at the time of his death. You can't get any higher than that. So he was among the best of the best. And whether it's tiddlywinks or you name the field, if you got someone who's very, very good, you learn from him, right?
Yes.
By example or this and that. So again, that was to me a very good experience, just spending that time.
When the two firms have gone down at this
Yeah,
point, and you're now, just help me out here. How old were you when you got married to
yeah,
Amy?
Amy. I was 29. So
Okay.
in my case, Scott, maybe yours or whatever, um, when you're married, you got to get a little serious. I've been goofing off, right? I was a good guy and thought I had a sense of direction, but maybe goofing off anyway. Once you're
Right.
married, you say, we got to make this thing work. So fortunately, well, I was 2 years. We were married 2 years with this bad firm, and that was no fun. That was no fun. And and then when I got hired by something more respectable, and then moved later on up to Terrytown, New York, and was there for 18 years with what they call Axe Houghton Mutual Funds Investment Management. Then things really started to work out for me.
Okay. But at that time, when the firm goes down and you're
Yeah,
31, you're married,
yeah,
and yeah,
terrible.
it does bring home the seriousness of life.
It tests the soul. Yes, yes.
And then what really does is when you have your first child. And I, in fact,
Yeah,
one of the guys that I had on my podcast, one of my former students, he says, "Oh, I had to
Yeah.
start rethinking things because my life
Yeah.
wasn't just about. I had to think in terms of not just me but others, and
True. True.
so that has, and which is good for guys to
Yeah.
say, hey, I got to take this responsibility,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
still, it is a bit of a wake up call. But when that happens, did you quickly get another job, or was it? Do you remember? Was this kind of going? Oh, this is a bit scary, or what was going
Well,
on?
no, it's a very bad time. The company had to declare receivership, like bankruptcy,
Oh yeah, that's what it's
and
called in
so
Ireland.
I spent time, 4 or 5 months, helping the attorneys come in from the SEC and to set all the accounts straight and get things prepared.
Right,
And I'd received from a judge a document that said I was entitled to be paid. In
right,
truth, I was working for 5 months and never got a nickel
okay,
because the money wasn't there. Oh
right.
my God! So that was hardship. That was hardship. But I think adversity. You develop a thick skin, and
Right.
so we got over that, and things worked out afterward.
Incidentally, I'm rereading Epictetus's discourses, so
Ah, good for
I,
you.
I'm
Yeah.
big into Stoicism, and the one
Yes.
thing that
Sure.
Epictetus will keep saying, a man who was born into slavery, or I don't know if he was born into slavery, I could be wrong about that, but he was a slave, and then he
Yeah.
ended up working his way out of that. But that throughout, you read the first 30 pages of discourses, and he's saying you have a choice to respond to things.
Sure.
You only take what you can control. You respond.
Good.
You
Good.
don't complain. You don't whine. And he says that repeatedly. He says
Yeah.
that repeatedly just in the first 30 pages, because I kept going, all right, this is a good reminder for people and myself. So what I'm
Let me
asking, I did this
let me
long thing.
interrupt. You know Marcus Aurelius, right?
Yeah, I had actually
And
read
he,
Meditations first
yeah,
before
and he, he
Epictetus.
he said this thing is no misfortune, but the ability to bear it with fortitude is a blessing indeed. Same message, kind of thing.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, these are as
Yeah.
Benjamin Franklin, who was a Stoic, would say that
Yeah.
these challenges are instructions,
Yeah.
and although when you're when you're I and but you learn that as you're going along.
Yeah.
But when you're 30 and you're just married, and if your wife's pregnant,
Yeah.
you're going, okay, I get this,
You
the
feel it.
adversity.
You
But what
feel
I'm
it. Yeah.
wondering, as you're going through all that stuff, from the time you get done with university
Yeah.
and being told no, you don't get this job, and then you
Yeah.
get on this, and for 5 years here you lose that because of the scandal. Then 5 years you're investigated by the SEC.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is it like culturally? I mean, what's pushing you forward? Is it just like I said, that in with my brother,
Yeah.
with coaching the soccer team, like, what do you mean you're supposed to show
Yeah.
up? We all know
Yeah.
that. And he goes, no, we don't all know that. So
Yeah.
what's it
Yeah.
like in the late 50s, early
Well, it's
60s?
it's an easy answer, nothing to do with 50s or 60. An
Okay.
easy answer because beforehand, as we discussed, the existential. What do I do with my life? I can do this or whatever. And you don't know, and you quest and you quest. The minute, I guess, in my case, and I think a lot of cases, you get married, you know what you have to do. You go to work, you support your wife, and if a baby comes along, hey, that makes it exponential. So it's simpler in one sense. It's not the whole breadth. Everything narrows down. You say, "This is my mission." I go to work or whatever. So yes, you have your issues. How do I climb back out, and how do I make a couple of bucks, and how do I do this and that? But it's a simpler thing, a simple sense of direction. Amy and I were on the Upper East Side. I forget 78th Street or something like that.
Okay.
A walk up, maybe 3 stories. no direct sunlight. The sun would hit a window across the street and come in this way. So it was modest and whatever,
Right.
one bedroom, whatnot. And so we were there until David was 4 or 5 months old. And I said, he deserves to breathe fresh air.
Right.
Manhattan on a seasonal basis, sometimes you don't want to be there. You just don't want to be there. You work
Right.
all day, and then you look at your fingernails, and they're all dirt from the atmosphere and whatnot. So,
Right.
so at that point, and let me see, I don't know exactly the month, but he was less than a year. We moved up, and we had looked. It's not easy working in Wall Street because the commute, I don't know, from where I lived in Manhattan was 45 minutes walking in subway, but from the country where I came from, it was 2 hours. So we checked, Amy was from Pennsylvania. We checked around New Hope, Pennsylvania, parts of New Jersey, Long Island Sound, Connecticut, whatnot, and finally came back to near where I grew up because I knew the terrain. It was nice and all this and that. And the sacrifice was getting up a little early and catching an early train. So it was drive to the station, get the train, get on a subway, which is the worst, sometimes the worst link of all, and then
Right.
end up in Wall Street. So if everything is working, it was 2 hours door to door. If things weren't on time, it was a little bit longer. So that's a hassle. But again,
Yes.
it was a choice we made.
What was it like during the with I know that you have Vietnam and all that stuff going on, but what was it like with the space program concurrently going on? Because because you had mentioned that there was a sense of cohesiveness with World War II, and everybody understood they were going to do
Sure,
their part. And I
sure.
understand that with Vietnam, and there was going to be, and I think logically or rationally, there would be division as different things were coming out. And if I'm wrong on that, forgive
Yeah.
me. But with the space program, was that? Do you how? What do you remember about the space program?
Uh, to me, it wasn't that significant. Maybe I shouldn't say that. So we made advances. No, I'll back up. Let me back up. My senior year at college was the Russians put up Sputnik, right?
Right.
You could feel right then we got to get serious. The university, we got to knuckle down. We got to do this and that. You could feel that in your bones and whatever. But the carry forward was they're shooting up another rocket and all that. Okay, we're up at Groton Long Point in the summer, and there's a black and white TV. And oh my God, they're on the moon, and the cousins are all together and whatnot. You felt, yeah, this is really something.
What was it? What was it like as you're working and your family has blossomed to four kids,
Yeah,
David, and then the three daughters. And what is that period like? Getting them all from baby to college, and because everybody has gone on and have done their things. But what
yeah.
is it? Just what was it? What's the daily grind like where you were at the time and all that?
I don't know. It's ever changing. I mean, kids grow up very, very quickly, as you know.
Yes, yes,
And once you settle into a community, there's a communal life. You take them to church. You get involved in school activities and whatnot. And then the thing I always hated was, oh, would you like to get on the board of this foundation or this school board? And so I found myself being stretched sometimes doing this goodwill kind of stuff that I never cared for at all. And also, again, Amy was so good because she'd raise the kids and then she'd have part-time jobs.
right.
And she was an editor before we got married, and she would go in certain cases attend town board meetings, come back home at 11 o'clock at night, write up the meetings, take them to work the next day. It was a tough life. But again, it worked out. So it wasn't all drudgery. I shouldn't say that at all. And the kids were good kids.
When that happens, when you no longer have to spend a minimum of 4 hours commuting, how does that impact you and being able to spend time with your kids and I want to be clear, and giving support to the rock we call Amy?
Yeah. Well said. Life was a little easier, and I won't say there was. We always had money issues. This was a big house, Scott. You remember, big rooms, big house, and
The Pound Ridge house.
Yeah, and for a
Yeah.
few years, the winter heating bills were big. And I said, okay, we'll put in 2 wood-burning stoves. I don't know what time of year you were there. Oh, yeah, you said the end of. No, I still don't know the end of
It
year.
was in. It would have
Yeah,
been December, so it could have
yeah.
been either
You,
December or I came right after Christmas. It was
you
one. It
might
was
have
one of the
been
two.
you might have been a little chilly there because we had 2 wood-burning stoves. There's a lot of nice wood around us, seasoned oak and whatever. So
Right.
David and I had, the big 2-man saw. You get at one end, I get at the other, and we go like this and whatnot. So we'd saw and stack and all this and that, and then burn the wood. And
Wait,
then,
how old? Hold on a second. The 2-man saw, because you got to remember, I'm from Oregon, so there's all these
yeah,
pictures of lumbermen with these
yeah,
huge
yeah,
trees. So,
yeah,
so I'm well acquainted with those pictures.
yeah.
You and how old is David when you say, "Son, it's time that we need to get this house warmer. We're
Yeah,
going out. We're cutting wood."
good question, because we were 9 years. Let me see, 9 years. He was an early
Okay.
teenager. We were 9 years in Bedford Village, and then we moved to Pound Ridge, and so I'm just saying 9, 4, 13. So yeah, a young teenager, and yeah, I pressed him into manual labor at an early age. And the other thing, if you remember our driveway, oh my goodness, wintertime, and we have a slant of, I don't know what the
Yeah.
degrees are. And each year I'd go out and buy 3 or 4 snow shovels. And then Amy'd usually back up and mangle a couple of them each winter. But that was a family affair. You all get out and shovel the snow. If you want to
Right.
get up the driveway, that's what you do.
Right.
So
Right.
adversity, but a collective approach which seemed to work and whatever.
Right. Right. The expectation that you will
Yeah,
put in. You live here.
yeah,
You can do
yeah.
the work. And how long do you live in Pound Ridge? How?
Yeah, well, that's 25 years. I can remember it because, you know, significant number, 25. Yeah.
Right.
And then
And
at that point, oh my goodness. Well, before that, I was 18 years with this firm, and then the firm was going to be sold out. And I got my account base. I said, will you come with me if I spin off? And the answer was yes. And then the firm said, we'll sue you if you take the business, but you can buy the business from us.
oh,
All right.
okay.
So I ended up capitulating, buying the business over a period of years
Right.
from the company and set up with another guy. And that was good. And the firm sort of prospered, except my partner, he had a drinking problem. It was terrible.
Right. Okay.
So we coexisted for a while, and I just had to shield him from my accounts and whatever. And then, thank God, when David went to law school, came out, and was floundering around with a firm and not liking it, a law firm, I said, well, come try the finance business. So he came over. And then within a year, we spun off and set up our own shop. And so that was the new chapter in his life and worked
Uh,
out so well.
this is back when you're sending things out to clients, the summary or
Yeah.
whatever it is. I don't know. Is it the prospectus or and forgive me if I.
No, it's just to let them know what our thought process
Okay, right.
was.
So
It's
you're
really an information piece, and here's
okay.
what we're playing around with, and
R-
whatever.
Yeah,
So
you
I
would.
don't know when that was, because I did that.
That would have been
I
in
did.
1990, I think. But what had happened was that
Yeah.
whatever room you had me staying in, your recent
Oh.
one,
Oh yeah.
your
Oh sure. Then I
your
was on my own then, or working with this other fellow.
okay,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you had recently sent it out, but there was a copy of it. So the next day when we were having lunch or breakfast, I don't remember
Yeah.
what it was, that
Yeah.
I started quoting you because I
Yeah.
and I was
And
quoting how you were using Emmanuel Lasker
Emmanuel
and
Lasker. Yeah.
as his approach to
Good.
chess and
Good.
things of that
Good.
nature too. And so
Yeah.
I was scoring brownie points. David was telling me
Good.
when I
Good.
brought up Emmanuel Lasker to you.
Yeah. Oh, you were. He's a great man. Who's a champ for 23 years now? Well, the game is deteriorated because Big Blue,
Right.
the machines beat people right and left. All the artistry has gone out of it, as far as I can tell.
David comes in with you. He takes and then he eventually buys your business. Then but you retire in 64 at the
Yes.
age of 64. I need to be clear when I'm
Yeah.
talking to you. What year am I talking, or
Yeah.
am I talking in age?
Yeah.
When do you leave New York and move to you left New York, went to Groton, Connecticut? Is that correct? And
Yeah.
then
We
you went to
so,
Florida.
we sold Pound Ridge, and that was after Amy's mother died. And have you been there? The waterfront place and whatnot, an
In
old
Groton?
house. Yeah. Have
Yeah,
you ever been
David,
there?
I
Yeah.
have
Good.
because
Good.
I don't know if you remember, but David was clear to me that we could go out
Good.
on a boat and he could sail it. And I will say this: I mean, normally I don't say anything disparaging about somebody on the podcast other than
Yeah.
about myself. But David,
Yeah.
as a dear friend as he is, and as much as I
He's not.
admire many things, he is not the sailor he thinks he is. So be very careful if he takes you out on the water.
No, no, no. No, the poor kid. I grew up with sailboats and all that, so to me it's second nature. But no, he may buy one sooner or later, and whatever. So here's my point. Amy's mother died. Here's the place, Groton Long Point. Uh, there was one other brother, she being one of five, who wanted it, but he didn't have the capital and whatever. So we bought it. Well, having bought it, uh, what do I do? Do we move up there and whatever? And that's what we did do. So it was the purchase of the house that caused me to retire, right?
Okay.
And I did help David. I had a certain account base where, the clients like you. You've been with them for 20 or 30 years or whatever it's been, and whatnot. So David and I would talk daily, and I had particular account responsibilities. So it was about a 10-year separation of whatever, of giving up the work entirely. But yeah. So when I was 64, we went to Groton. We were there for 20 years. And then Amy, being the tough one, did she go out in January with towels around her face and walking in the winter wind? And that wind is tough there. It comes right over the water. It's icy. They call it the Montreal Express.
I can imagine it
And
was cold when I was there, and I think it was the summer
yeah, and she
when you
said,
get a
well,
breeze.
would it make sense to go down to Florida, or no, to move where it's a little bit warmer in the summer months? So we took a long time looking. And then when we first came down here, it was 6 months here, 6 months at Groton. So we did that for a decade or something like that. And
Okay.
then sold whatever David bought 3 years ago or something like that. Yeah.
And let me just recap some of the things. So you're in Florida, born in 1936, had a incredibly interesting life, going to every place from Juneau, Alaska to Wyoming, to spending living off a boat, traveling in Europe, coming and experiencing the the salad oil scandal, then being
Hmm.
investigated by the SEC, which I'm not suggesting that it was pleasant, but there was adversity
Hmm.
that you overcame and had to work through.
Yeah.
Ended up having four kids and moving out to the area nearer where you grew up, and then building a business. And then your son ended up buying that and continued to develop
Yeah.
it. And then you're in Florida, and I'm going to think about the numbers here. Well, you tell me, how many grandkids do you have?
Yeah, 10. And the whole thing is, I mentioned to Amy, but the other half, I mean, she gets full credit more than me for the cohesiveness and for things working out. But the beauty of Groton Long Point, maybe I'm repeating myself, is that our children's children get to know each other, the various cousins, and they
Right.
stay close to each other. So as a grandparent, we feel blessed that it's worked out. So, what is it? 3 years ago, I had a heart operation, right? A new
Right.
valve, and I've had two other heart operations since then, kind of thing. Our kids have been beautiful. I say, no, I don't want to see you. Stay up north. No, they come cycle through and check us out and all that kind of stuff. So, again, we've been very, very fortunate that way. It's just worked out. Uh, and so right now, being in our dotage, Amy is totally active with tennis and pickleball and whatnot. I've got my Tai Chi and I don't know what else. And life is good, Scott. Come visit us.